to become and stay crypto native. I think for many folks here that are working at crypto companies, they know how big of a challenge this is, especially as you're scaling up. You know, when you have 1 or 2 folks and you're building a DeFi protocol, it's super easy to be crypto native. When you have 50 folks or 100 folks or 5,000 folks, it gets extremely difficult. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. I'm going to talk a little bit about protocol specialists and also share how other folks here can also build up a protocol specialist function within their teams. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our challenge. So the company that I joined 3 years ago is called Bison Trails. And Bison Trails is a very large node infrastructure provider. We support more than 30 protocols. We run full nodes, validators, archival nodes, indexers, all kinds of infrastructure needs. And the challenge that we faced is that there's a lot of protocols out there. And you know, as a team, we want to support the entire ecosystem. But as you might imagine, when you have thousands of protocols to choose from, it gets quite challenging. And so that's the job that I came here to solve. And I'll tell you guys a little bit of a funny story. So when I first interviewed at Bison Trails, the job title that I interviewed for was operations manager. And the job description said, if you like crypto and you want crypto to be successful, come work here. I said, great, that's me. And you know, in conversations with the 2 co-founders, you know, we didn't really know what the job was going to be, and so the day before, I wrote in my journal the things that I thought I should be doing as a member of the team. And when I came to talk to them the next morning, they said, hey, there's a couple of things we think you should be doing. I said, great, I have a list as well, but mine's written down. So you tell me what you think, and I'll tell you where we align. And so they listed 4 things, and I'm like, yep, got all those 4. Here's the 5th thing. They said, yep, you should do that too. I said, great, that's my job description. And that's how the title, Protocol Specialist, came into being. We made it up, but now we have a team of 2 protocol specialists, we have 4 protocol analysts, and protocol specialist is a role that has started to get adoption throughout the industry. And so some of our competitors like Blockdame and Figment and others have protocol specialists, but also other ecosystem participants such as A16Z also has a team of protocol specialists. We think it's a really important role, and I'm super excited to tell you a little bit about it. In my mind, protocol specialists are to the 2020s what product managers were to the 2000s, and so I'm super excited. So what is a protocol specialist? A protocol specialist has 3 key functions, and we're going to talk about them in depth. The first one is watchtower, second one is playmaker, and the third one is the trusted partner. As a watchtower, we are keenly attuned to emerging market and technology waves. So we're the crypto native folks at the company, paying attention to what's going on, learning about it, understanding it. As a playmaker, we're the key information node for all things protocol. And that becomes really important because somebody has to go and learn all the things, and you can't have everybody go and learn all the things and watch all the YouTube videos. It's quite hard. And the last is a trusted partner, and that we work with the protocols we support and their communities. And I'm going to cover each of these in depth, but you know, one thing I want to highlight is that I'm going to be talking about our experience, but then towards the end, I'm going to start talking a little bit about how does this apply to you guys, and how can you take this information and put it to use within your own companies, your own teams, and your own ecosystems. So as a watchtower, there's the most key function is that this is the most crypto native person and team at the company, right? Like folks on our team, we live and breathe crypto. The reason I'm not fun at parties and weddings is that crypto is all I do, and so I'm a terrible conversationalist now. But you know, from our perspective, because we focus on protocols, that's where I spend all of my time, learning about the different blockchains that are out there, the layer 2s that are out there, and interoperability and bridge protocols, and even DeFi sometimes. But the important thing is that you're not just out here doing research and learning about stuff, although that is certainly very cool, but then the goal is to take that information and operationalize it for the rest of your organization so that they can do their best work. And as part of doing that, you know, you're constantly learning about things, but the important thing is that it's very easy to get a Messari subscription and you know, you see the updates coming in. It's very easy to be on Twitter and like follow the CEO of something or the founder of another thing and see what they're talking about, and anybody can do that. But the important thing, and how you really become knowledgeable about what's going on and can think strategically, is that we are very active members in the communities that we support. We're actively contributing to them. So we're not out there just like reading things, we're out there creating things and creating change and creating impact. And the last bit that we do as part of this role is that we're constantly vigilant for protocol changes. You know, on our side, we run a lot of infrastructure, and so when something's happening to a blockchain, we want to know about it, right? If there's downtime, if there's changes to consensus, if there's like an attack going on or something that impacts us, we need to be aware of it. And it becomes really interesting because when we talk about like what does this actually play out as, on our side, one of the most important things that we do is that our team is responsible for leading the protocol road mapping that Coinbase Cloud engages in. And what that means is that, right now we support 30-odd protocols, right? We want to get to 100, we want to get to 1,000, right? These are crazy astronomical numbers. And so one of the things that our team does is constantly learn about protocols, but then take that information and create what are essentially like very fancy business cases that talk about, okay, how does this protocol work? How does inflation work? How do the nodes work? How does this impact us? Who are going to be our customers? How do we see the usage of this protocol developing? And we take all that information and start empowering the rest of the organization to make decisions about, okay, do we want to support this protocol? And if we do want to support this protocol, how do we go about it, right? How do we go to market? How do we think about pricing? How do we think about all this stuff? One of the other things we do is we do constant protocol updates. And that this is an internal resource where we're out there paying attention all the time. But let's say there's a change happening, right? And for us, it's all about protocols. For you guys, it might be about DeFi or NFTs or identity. There's a new standard being released. There's a new bug. There's a new upgrade coming up that we need to be aware of that changes something for us or for our customers or about our products. And one of the things that we do is we have to know all the different teams within Coinbase Cloud and understand what is it that's important to them, right? Like the sales team is really going to want to know when the inflation rate changes, right? The infrastructure team is really going to want to know when like there's going to be a change to the protocol. It's going to change state growth, for example. It's going to change something about signing or something else. And we're constantly keeping our team up to date with that, giving them this information, and then empowering them to then carry out their functions. So product can know what they're going to do, sales, and customer success, and so on. And when I talk about like actively contributing, right? Like you guys might have heard about the first decentralized protocol merger between Keep Network and NuCypher. These are both protocols that we support on the Coinbase Cloud platform. We've been running nodes on those protocols for several years at this point. We know the teams really well. And one of the things that we saw was that there was an opportunity to actually merge them into a single protocol, which is like an unheard of thing when it comes to work token models. It's like really, really cool. It's the first one. And I worked on it, right? So I led the governance proposal for that. And this is something that impacts our team because now we're running these two separate protocols. There's going to be a single protocol. So that changes how we operate the infrastructure, how we think about pricing, how we think about like the long-term longevity of this protocol. And so on the one hand, we could have been kind of on the other side, receiving information, receiving updates as they come in, and then trying to like figure out and scramble. It's like, okay, what's our strategy going to be? How are we going to go about this? But on the other hand, we can take this opportunity to go and actually like create the change that we want to see and improve these protocol ecosystems, which not only improves their success, but also improves our success on those protocols and also our customer success. And so this is what I mean by the watchtower. Next, we're going to look at the playmaker. So the playmaker and our role there is to serve as that key information point. In that, something that I mentioned earlier is that when you have sales guys, right? You can have the most technical sales guy in the world, but when you're covering 30-odd protocols and you're planning to scale that to 100, it's not reasonable to expect for them to go and learn everything there is to know about them on their own. Like you just can't have that. And even if your team is like fairly small, it's still very, very difficult to do that. And so one of the core functions that the protocol specialist serves is to aggregate this information in a way that can be spread across the entire organization so that people can use it and understand it and work with it. And that's where the documentation piece comes in. And that when you have a small team, it's super easy to just be like, hey, Bob or Mara or whatever, here's how this protocol works, here's what you need to know. But you can't do that when you have 50 people or 100 people, right? You need to be able to scale that out. And so documentation becomes super, super important to scaling out that knowledge so that when questions do come in, it's like, okay, super strategic question, how about this specific nuance, this specific detail? And then as you get them in, you take that information and say, okay, can I improve the documentation? Right? Because other people might have this question as well. And so you continue updating these living documents so they continue being used throughout the organization over the life cycle of your support for that protocol or that dApp or that ecosystem or whatever it is. And the interesting thing that comes out of that is that when you're constantly thinking about these things and you're thinking about what are the needs of the organization, what are the needs of our customers, and like how are they thinking about things, how are things going to impact them, what that allows you to do is start formulating strategies and be really thoughtful and intentional of saying like, okay, this change is coming. here's what you need to do, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to do, here's the trade-offs that you need to think about, and like let's work together on formulating a strategy. And that's super hard because for you folks that work with customers or work with other partners or ecosystem participants, it's very difficult for them to also keep up with what's going on. And so having a trusted source of information that can help you think about things strategically and understand what's going on becomes an invaluable resource. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. So one of the things that we put out, for example, on our website are protocol guides. And these are like beefy, awesome pieces of information so that if you wanted to go learn about Near, sure, you can go and like read all their blog posts and read their documentation and read, whatever, and like watch all the YouTube videos. And that's one way of doing it. But what we've done is we've aggregated all that information into these incredibly thorough guides that give you all the information you need to know to make actionable decisions on these protocols. And this information goes out to our customers, and it goes out to our partners, it goes out to the community members, and it becomes an invaluable source of insights. One of the other things that we kind of think about is that, there's strategic initiatives that come up. And so as an infrastructure provider, something that obviously impacts us is MEV, right? Maximally extractable value. It's the ability for validators and bots to essentially control what goes into a block and in which order and extract value from it. This obviously impacts us, and so one of the things that's important to us is how do we do that in a way that is as healthy as possible for the ecosystem and community. And so something that I worked on is I helped launch the Flashbots ETH2 working group, where a number of ecosystem participants, such as infrastructure providers and client teams and other folks, have come together to work with the Flashbots team in order to give them feedback and advice and testing on their proposed design for the Flashbot system on Ethereum after the merge. This impacts everybody. And by being early to the conversation and being really strategic there, it informs how we look at it, and also informs how they look at it, and it creates like this really nice roadmap for how you go about dealing with these things that are really like impactful to the business. And the last thing is, when you think about empowering people, and you think about empowering customers, it also comes down to kind of like nuanced, nitty-gritty details that like nobody really understands. And so one of the examples is on Keep Network, they have this product called TBTC. And what that is it's a decentralized Bitcoin on Ethereum. And the way that they did it was like this maximally secure, powerful system. And they used collateral in ETH in order to secure the deposited Bitcoin to make sure that the nodes that are holding the Bitcoin can't run away with it. Well, they can, but they're going to lose more money than they gain, right? But one of the things that required is that now you have these collateralization ratios, and those can fluctuate, and they can fall, and you can be liquidated. And liquidations are a difficult concept to understand because you're dealing with nodes. It's not just like a DeFi liquidation. And so one of the things we put together, for example, is a guide that was not only used by our team and our community, but also other ecosystem participants to say, okay, how do I go about managing my Keep infrastructure in a way that keeps the system healthy and secure and make sure that I don't get liquidated and continue earning rewards. So it's really impactful work that ends up having reverberations throughout the ecosystem. And the last thing I'll cover of the three is a trusted partner. And so as infrastructure providers, we see ourselves as protocol stewards, right? In the same way that folks that are working within the DeFi ecosystem, right? If you're like heavily integrated into Aave, you have to be a steward of the Aave ecosystem, right? You have to participate, you have to help out and make sure that that ecosystem is healthy and that good decisions are made. And that's exactly how we view our role on the protocol side. And so we also become governance and community leaders in that governance, a lot of the time, is a thankless job, but it becomes really important. And so one of the things that we take upon ourselves is when we see those opportunities to say, okay, how can we improve these protocols? And something about the, actually I'll cover that next. How can we improve these protocol ecosystems, right? And how can we improve the communities? And so one of the things is, for example, I was the judging steward, one of the lead organizers of ETHDenver in 2019 and 2020. And this is stuff that I was doing while I was employed at what was at the time Bison Trails and is now Coinbase Cloud. And the reason we saw that is because obviously this is an extremely impactful event and brings the community together and is really beneficial to everybody. And we helped organize the Lightning Summit for the Lightning Network. We helped organize ETH New York. That was one of the ETH Global hackathons. So there's a lot of stuff like that. And I'll give you a couple examples of that. At this point we've launched 30-some protocols, and you would not believe it, but we got really good at it. We've seen all the different iterations of how things can be done. We've seen all the different governance designs and all the different parameters and all the different trade-offs. And so now when we work with a protocol, we have great tactical knowledge of saying, okay, you want to run an incentivized testnet. Here's like a really great example of how to do it. Here's a really bad example of how to do it. Here's the things that they did well. Here's the things that they did poorly, right? Here's the timelines you should be thinking about. Here's how you engage the community. Here's how you share updates. And by doing that, we're continuing to improve the protocols that we are actively participating in and will ultimately end up supporting. And two examples, well, one quick example of that is that the Near protocol, which is like a really great protocol that has smart contracts and is doing really well, but they had this like limited mainnet, or like mainnet beta, you can think of it as, and they wanted to take it to fully public and accessible mainnet. But the way to do that is they wanted to do it via the community, and that it's very easy as a centralized team to flip the switch and be like, this is the mainnet now. But they wanted it to come from the community. And so one of the things that we worked on is, okay, let's put together a process by which the community can talk about and decide like what are the factors that we're looking at, what are the characteristics of this network that are important in order for us to launch mainnet in a decentralized way and vote on it. And so one of the things, for example, was what's the percentage of tokens that are currently staked? If 2% of tokens are staked, that is not a very secure network, right? And so there is some level there. Let's say it's 10% or 15% or 50%, like whatever that number is. But you want to be thoughtful about it. And so those are some of the areas that we helped out. And I already mentioned the ETHDenver organizing. And so when we go back to it, right, the Watchtower is keenly in tune to emerging market and technology waves, right? We're the crypto native person. We're paying attention to what's going on. We're empowering people. The Playmaker is a key information node for all things protocol, that we want to have knowledge that is shareable and accessible, and so that our effort can spread throughout the entire organization. And last thing is a trusted partner, works with the protocols we support and their communities. And it's so important because it's very easy to be a taker and a user and somebody that just leverages a protocol but doesn't give back and is kind of like in the background and is hanging out. But when you actually engage and you improve it for everybody and you improve your own success, and we think that's really important. And so how does this apply to you guys? How do you think about starting a team? How do you think about bringing this capability in-house and actually developing it for yourselves and also for your colleagues? Well, one of the first things is that this is a brand new role, right? It's been around for 3 years. It was made up. Now it's a little bit less made up, but it's still very, very new. There's not a lot of playbooks, and I'm hoping that this will serve as a playbook for some folks. One of the first things to start with is that you want to start with a single protocol expert. These people today are pretty rare. There's not a lot of them. And what you want is one person that really understands what's going on to hit the ground running and really understand okay, what are my company's needs? What are my team's needs, right? How should I be working with them? How should I think about building out this team? So that when they do start hiring people, they can start hiring people that in an extremely judicious way. And on our side, the first protocol specialist that we hired, Elias Simas, who's my closest partner, it took us about a year to find the absolute right person, right? And we were kind of taking it slow, and we weren't extremely actively looking, but at the same time, it's after we brought him on, powerhouse, incredible talent, incredible value add to the team. And we have 2 protocol analysts here right now. We have 2 more starting in a couple of weeks, and they're also hitting the ground running and starting to add value really, really quickly. And if you don't do that, and you hire somebody that's not actually crypto native and is still kind of learning, then you have no idea how long it's going to take them to catch up, and you have no idea where they're actually going to end up. Because if they're the most crypto native person at your company, they don't have anybody to look up to, right? They don't have anybody to start working with or learning from. And so they're building out this function while still trying to figure it out. And it's very difficult to do with a brand new function. The other part is educate. In that when you're working with product managers, you're working with engineers, you're working with salespeople, you don't want to be oh, I'm the crypto genius and these are the crypto dum-dums. That does not work, and that is not scalable. And so as you're working with these folks, you want to spend time educating, helping them understand, and helping them really piece the information together in a way that frankly excludes you from the process. They don't need you anymore. That's the ideal outcome. The ideal outcome is to not be needed anymore unless it's in case of emergency. It's we have a joke at Bison Trails, Viktor as a service. And that when you try a lot of things, and when things go wrong, it's okay, Viktor, we need to pull you in and actually come help troubleshoot this. The other part is creating process. And that because this is a new role, and you're okay, you're doing some sales stuff, and you're doing some marketing stuff, and you're doing content stuff, and you're doing product stuff, Well, if you just let this person like run wild and start stepping on people's toes, and it's like, okay, I'm going to be a product manager now. Like, they're not a product manager. And so what you want to do is you want to be really clear about, okay, how does a protocol specialist interact with the other team members? Like, where do they actually plug in? And that's something that we've been pretty judicious about in that, okay, here's how we have the protocol pipeline. Here's how we identify protocols. Here's the funnel that it goes through. Here's how the decision is made. And once that decision is made, here's how the protocol specialist works with the different teams in order to empower them, right, without actually doing their job. And so being able to be specific there sets everybody up for success. And the last part, and I keep harping back on this, but documentation. Documentation takes a lot of work, but it pays dividends, especially as a team grows. The closest partners for protocol specialists, number one is product. And that fundamentally, in many ways, this is like a strategic product, crypto native role. And you're going to be spending a lot of time with product, helping them figure out what should be done. And then the ideal is that as you inform product and as you work very closely with them, they can take that information, synthesize it, understand what's going on, and put plans of action in place that pull in the other teams to execute on their respective components. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. And so here's the questions that everybody should be asking themselves, because everybody here is from a different walk of life, and you're working on different projects, and you have different sized teams. So how do you actually apply this? I talked a lot about protocols, but as I mentioned, it could be DeFi, right? It could be NFTs, it could be identity, it could be so many other use cases. And so the first question to ask yourself is, what problem are you solving, right? If you are a money manager or a hedge fund and you're like doing liquidity mining, really what you want is somebody that understands DeFi protocols, understands collateral ratios, understands how liquidations happen, understands how you can do recursive borrowing, and also probably has some Solidity skills, right? The second question is, how external versus internal should my team be? Because that changes quite a lot. And so on our side, we're very external. And so, we don't have room for just like a hardcore researcher that just like goes and finds answers, because that's really important, but really, this is a team-based role, and so you want to be somebody that's very communicative. You want to be somebody that can write well. You want somebody that can speak at conferences and represent you and your brand and your team in the protocol communities in which they operate. And the last bit is, what other skills do you need? And so I gave the DeFi example earlier, but again, that can apply to all walks of life. And so one of the things that we got very fortunate with is that Elias Simus, my close partner, he is really great at data science. Like, you can give him these mammoth data sets, and he figures out what's going on and is really able to derive insights from them. And that's super helpful for us, because one of the things we did was, we're running ETH2 validators, and we looked at the testnet performance, and we said, okay, how do we actually measure the performance of validators that go beyond just like the basic metrics of like, did you attest when you were supposed to, did you propose when you were supposed to, right? And this is like a complex problem, but once you have insights there, then all of a sudden you're able to make strategic decisions around your infrastructure and how you roll things out and like where you're based and all that kinds of stuff, right? And that continues to apply throughout all the various protocols that we're part of. And so I'm extremely happy to have the honor of sharing this role with you. We think that it's super high value, and I will be over there. And so if anybody would like to learn more or get any feedback or advice, I'm more than happy to chat with you. And so thank you so much for your time and for listening.